The Galaxia Bazaar hummed with the life and chatter of 1,000 species, its corridors alive with traders from every corner of the universe. The air was rich with the scent of exotic spices and sizzling, unidentifiable meats. Jason wandered through the market with wide eyes, a human in a sea of diversity, his backpack filled with an assortment of culinary gadgets. As he approached a stall boasting a collection of fruits that shimmered like jewels, a bulbous creature with 6 eyes gestured towards him. "Try Zephorian bliss berries, guaranteed not to kill you," it chortled in Galactic Common, a tongue spoken by many star travelers. Jason laughed, picking up a berry and examining its radiant hues. "Not a high bar for safety, but sure, I'll give it a shot." He popped the berry into his mouth. The flavor exploded, a mix of sweet, sour, and a hint of something eerily like chocolate. A few stalls over, Lyria, an Illyrian xenobiologist, observed him curiously. Her kind was delicate, their diets restricted to a specific range of nutrients. Intrigued by Jason's brazen consumption, she approached him. Illyrians were known for their ethereal beauty, and Jason couldn't help but notice her graceful movements as she walked. "Did you just eat a Zephorian bliss berry without checking its biocompatibility?" Lyria asked, her voice filled with both shock and a scientific curiosity. Jason shrugged, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Yeah, I guess I did. Humans can pretty much eat anything. Or at least we like to try." Lyria's eyes widened. "Fascinating. I'm Lyria, by the way. I study xenobiology here at the station. Humans are quite rare in this sector. Is your digestive resilience typical for your species?" "I'm Jason. Nice to meet you, Lyria. And yeah, pretty much. We've got stomachs of steel. Or so we like to think." He smiled, offering his hand, which she took gently. "Would you mind accompanying me for some scans? Nothing intrusive. I'm working on a comparative study of digestive enzymes, and I've never had the chance to analyze a human." Jason considered the offer. His mission was to explore and understand, after all. "Lead the way," he agreed, intrigued by the prospect of contributing to alien science. As they walked to Lyria's lab, Jason couldn't help but be captivated by the rhythm of the station. Aliens of all shapes and sizes bartered, argued, and laughed. The station was a testament to the universe's diversity, a point where paths crossed and different lives momentarily aligned. Lyria's lab was a small, neat room filled with advanced scanning equipment. She directed Jason to a soft chair next to a large device that looked suspiciously like a giant camera. "This won't hurt a bit," she assured him, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. "So what brings a human to Galaxia Bazaar?" "Purely the culinary adventures," Lyria asked, her tone light, eyes still on her screens. "That and a bit of wanderlust. Humans are explorers by nature. We go where the wind takes us, and my wind smells like alien barbecue," Jason joked, earning a light laugh from Lyria. The device hummed softly around him, and within minutes, Lyria had what she needed. "Thank you, Jason. This data will be invaluable for my research. Your enzyme profiles are truly unique." "Glad to be of help," Jason replied, standing. "Maybe you can show me which stalls have the best food that won't kill me, since you're such an expert." Lyria smiled, a spark of excitement in her gaze. "It would be my pleasure. Let's call it an exchange of knowledge. I'll guide you through the culinary dangers of Galaxia, and you can tell me more about human cuisine." Together, they stepped back into the throng of the market, the beginning of what promised to be a most enlightening friendship. Chapter 2, Curiosity and Intrigue. As Jason and Lyria navigated through the bustling lanes of the Galaxia Bazaar, their conversation flowed seamlessly from the nuances of human culinary arts to the strict dietary practices of the Illyrians. Lyria was particularly fascinated by the way humans could adapt their digestion to a wide variety of planetary cuisines. "So, humans can essentially eat anything?" Lyria asked, her tone mixed with disbelief and admiration, as they stopped in front of a stall displaying an array of sizzling meats on skewers. "Well, we can eat many things, not exactly anything. But yeah, our bodies are pretty good at handling a variety of foods that might be toxic to others," Jason explained, picking up a skewer and offering it to Lyria, who politely declined. It's remarkable. Illyrians have such sensitive systems. We have to be extremely careful about what we ingest, Lyria said, leading him to a stall with fruits that glowed softly in the dim light of the market. As they continued their tour, a figure approached them briskly. He was another human, older, with a confident stride and a friendly smile. Jason, I didn't expect to see another Terran out here, he exclaimed, clapping Jason on the back. I'm Marcus. I run a supply chain through these parts. Jason introduced Lyria, who was intrigued by the presence of another human. Marcus, this is Lyria. She's showing me which foods won't send me to the medical bay. Ah, an excellent guide then. Our human digestive system is a bit of a legend out here. Saved me more than a couple of times from some dicey meals. Marcus laughed, joining their stroll through the market. Actually, Marcus, I was just analyzing Jason's enzyme profiles. There's a lot we can learn about human digestion. Perhaps you'd be interested in participating in my study too, Lyria suggested, half-jokingly. Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What would that involve? Just a simple scan, nothing painful or time-consuming. I'm collecting data for a comparative study of digestive adaptations across species, Lyria explained. Marcus nodded, a gleam of curiosity in his eyes. Sure, why not? It's not every day you get to contribute to science. Lead the way, Doctor. They made their way to Lyria's lab, a hub of technological wonders that both men admired. As Lyria prepared the equipment, Jason turned to Marcus. How did you end up running a supply chain out here? It's all about going where the demand takes you, and the frontier always needs supplies. Plus, the fringe benefits include trying foods from 100 planets, Marcus replied, settling into the chair for his scan. Lyria conducted the scans, her screens flickering with data. Incredible! Even between you two, there are nuances in how your enzymes work. Human biology is truly diverse. Sounds like you could write a whole book about what humans can stomach, Jason joked as Marcus stepped out of the scanner. I just might, Lyria mused. With more data like this, we could develop better dietary supplements for interspecies trade. You're helping more than you know. The trio spent the rest of the day discussing potential applications of the research. As the market began to close, they agreed to meet the next day for a meal at a restaurant known for its universal cuisine, one that was safe for all species. As they parted ways, Jason felt a sense of camaraderie with Marcus and a deepening bond with Lyria. The universe might be vast and filled with mysteries, but shared meals and shared knowledge seemed to make it smaller, one discovery at a time. Chapter 3: An Unexpected Threat. Jason, Marcus, and Lyria reconvened at the universally acclaimed restaurant within the space station. The eatery was famed for its ability to cater to the diverse biological needs of its patrons, making it a perfect gathering spot for the trio. As they settled into their seats, Marcus shared tales of his latest supply run to a remote mining colony. You wouldn't believe the logistics it takes to get supplies past the pirate sectors. But it's worth it when you see how much they rely on us. Lyria listened intently, her interest piqued by Marcus's experiences. It's a different kind of science, isn't it? The science of supply and demand, risk and reward. Jason chuckled. And here I thought the riskiest thing I'd do was eat unknown alien food. Their light-hearted banter was interrupted when a server approached, visibly distressed. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we need to evacuate the restaurant. There's been a health alert issued station-wide. Please, follow me. The sudden announcement sparked a mix of confusion and concern among the diners. Jason stood up, looking towards Lyria. Do you know what's going on? Lyria shook her head, retrieving her communicator to check for updates. There's not much information yet, just that there's a quarantine protocol in effect. Something about a possible contagion. Marcus's face grew serious. A contagion here? That could spread fast with all the traffic through this station. We should get somewhere safe and try to find out more. Agreeing, they followed the crowd out of the restaurant, noticing the growing unease as people hurried along. Once outside, Jason suggested, Let's head to my ship. It's got a medbay setup. Maybe we can figure out something there. Help out if this is really serious. Marcus nodded in agreement. Good idea. My ship's nearby, too. Let's pool our resources. The group made their way to the docking bay, entering Jason's ship, a well-equipped vessel that reflected his readiness for any situation. Lyria, with her scientific expertise, took the lead in setting up a makeshift diagnostic station using the medbay's equipment. As she worked, Marcus connected to the station's main data network to gather information. Looks like the contagion might be linked to a foodborne pathogen. Symptoms are showing up in species across the station. That's our common link, Jason realized. The food market. We were all there yesterday. Lyria, could something from the market be responsible? Lyria was already scanning through data from her previous research. It's possible. Many pathogens are harmless to one species but deadly to another. If someone introduced a new item without proper checks, we need to check the market, Marcus cut in, already heading towards the door. If we can identify the source, maybe Lyria can work on a countermeasure. Armed with protective gear and Lyria's scanning equipment, they returned to the now deserted market. The vibrant stalls were eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the bustling hub they were just the day before. Methodically, they began examining the food samples from various stalls, especially those that had introduced new items recently. Lyria's device beeped rapidly when they approached a stall that had been selling an exotic fruit new to the station's ecosystem. This must be it, Lyria said, examining the readout. These fruits emit a low-level toxin, harmless to some but potentially lethal to others without proper adaptation. We need to alert the station authorities. Get this stuff quarantined, Marcus stated, already on his communicator relaying the information. With the potential source identified, they worked through the night, assisting in the containment efforts and helping Lyria to develop a preliminary treatment for those affected, using her extensive knowledge of xenobiology and the human immune system as a basis for creating a broad-spectrum antidote. Their quick thinking and decisive action helped stem the spread of the contagion, showcasing not only the dangers of interstellar commerce, but the strength found in diverse teamwork. As dawn approached on the space station, they watched from the observation deck, a sense of quiet accomplishment among them. Chapter 4: Closer Bonds. The chaos of the past day had left Jason, Marcus, and Lyria both exhausted and contemplative. They gathered in Jason's ship's common room, sipping on steaming cups of replicated tea. Marcus had brought a few pastries from his own supplies, and Jason joked about how even alien emergencies couldn't ruin his love for a good snack. Never thought I'd be eating pastries in the middle of a potential quarantine zone, Marcus remarked, leaning back in his seat. If someone wrote this down, they'd think it was a bad sci-fi plot. Jason grinned, but his eyes shifted to Lyria, who was reviewing the data from their market investigation. Lyria, you've been staring at those scans all day. How's it looking? She placed her tablet on the table, her expression thoughtful. We've contained the immediate threat, but this incident highlighted a gap in our station's food safety protocols. The exotic produce was allowed in without proper checks. Sounds like you just volunteered to help them set up better protocols, Jason said, trying to lighten the mood. Lyria chuckled softly. Maybe I will. But first, I think we all need some rest. They parted ways for the evening, and the ship settled into a calm quiet. Jason couldn't sleep, though. He found himself staring out the viewport, watching the stars drift by. His thoughts kept circling back to Lyria, her intelligence, her curiosity, the way she dove into the unknown with a mix of caution and excitement. The next morning, they regrouped to present their findings to the station's authorities. Marcus took the lead, detailing their steps in identifying the contaminated fruit, while Lyria provided the scientific basis. Jason chimed in here and there, adding his perspective as someone who had experienced the market firsthand. After the presentation, as the three of them walked back to the ship, Marcus slapped Jason on the shoulder. Not bad for a couple of Terrans, huh? Jason laughed. I think Lyria's the real MVP here. Don't be so modest, Lyria said, smiling. It was a team effort. They decided to spend the afternoon exploring parts of the station they hadn't seen before. areas outside the bustling market where locals and long-term residents lived and worked. The quieter neighborhoods showed a different side of station life, one that was less commercial and more personal. At one point, they stumbled upon a small park, a rare patch of greenery aboard the station. It was empty, the artificial sunlight casting a soft glow over the grass. They settled on a bench near the center of the park, and the conversation naturally shifted to their individual journeys. "So, Marcus," Jason asked, "what keeps you out here in the frontier, running supplies?" Marcus shrugged, a thoughtful look crossing his face. "It's the challenge, I guess. The idea that you can make a difference, even if it's just getting food and medicine where it's needed. Plus, there's a certain freedom out here that you can't find in the inner systems." Jason nodded, then turned to Lyria. "And you, Lyria? What made you choose xenobiology? Seems like a pretty specialized field." Lyria tilted her head slightly, considering her answer. "Curiosity, mostly. I wanted to understand the differences that make every species unique. Studying how we're all built differently, how we survive in the environments we come from, it's fascinating. And it reminds me that no matter how different we are, there's always common ground." Their conversation meandered from their professional lives to personal anecdotes, stories of Marcus's narrow escapes from pirates, Jason's culinary experiments gone wrong, and Lyria's early days as a student on her homeworld. As the hours passed, their laughter filled the empty park, the stresses of the past few days momentarily forgotten. At some point, Marcus excused himself to check on a shipment he had coming in, leaving Jason and Lyria alone on the bench. The silence that followed was comfortable, the kind that only formed after spending genuine time together. Jason glanced at Lyria, noticing how the artificial sunlight caught the subtle patterns in her skin. "It's funny," he said, breaking the quiet. "I never thought I'd be sitting in a park on a space station, talking to someone like you." Lyria raised an eyebrow, a teasing smile on her lips. "Someone like me? Should I be flattered or offended?" "Flattered," Jason said quickly, his tone light. "I mean, someone who's not only smart but genuinely easy to talk to." Her smile softened. "I could say the same about you. Humans might have a reputation for being brash and unpredictable, but you're different. You're curious without being reckless. It's refreshing." They sat quietly for a moment, the air between them shifting. Jason hesitated before speaking again. "You know, I feel like I've learned more about the universe in the past few days than I have in years." Lyria looked at him, her expression open. "And I feel like I've learned more about humans than I ever thought possible." Jason smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "Maybe we're teaching each other something valuable." "Maybe we are," Lyria said, her voice soft. The sound of distant station activity finally broke their moment, reminding them of the larger world waiting beyond the quiet park. But as they stood to leave, there was a shared understanding between them, something subtle yet undeniable. Chapter 5, Discoveries. After their break in the park, Jason and Lyria returned to their respective ships to rest. But the peace didn't last long. A message from Marcus pinged their communicators before dawn. "I've got a lead," Marcus said when Jason answered. His face filled the small screen. "One of my contacts mentioned a shipment of exotic goods that was smuggled onto the station. It might explain how that contaminated fruit got past customs." Jason sat up in his bunk, rubbing his eyes. "Sounds worth looking into. Where do we start?" "Lyria should meet us at Dock C7, Marcus replied. "I'll explain everything once you're both here." Minutes later, Jason was pulling on his jacket and making his way to the agreed location. Lyria arrived shortly after, looking alert despite the early hour. "What's the plan?" she asked Marcus, who was leaning casually against a stack of cargo crates. "I've been talking to a vendor I know," Marcus began. He saw a few crates offloaded at a private hangar a couple of days ago. No paperwork, no inspection. It's not unusual for smugglers to sneak in rare goods. But this time, it matches the timing of the outbreak. Lyria crossed her arms. "If that fruit came from one of these unregistered shipments, we might find a larger contamination source." "Exactly," Marcus said. "I figure we check out the hangar, see what's still there. If we find evidence, we report it to station security. Jason nodded. Sounds like a good start. Let's move before anyone decides to clean up their tracks. The trio headed for the private hangar, a part of the station less polished and far quieter than the market or the residential districts. Here, dim lighting and the occasional hiss of steam from maintenance vents created an atmosphere that put them all on edge. When they reached the hangar, the doors were locked, as expected. "I've got this," Marcus said confidently, pulling out a small device. Within moments, the lock clicked open, and the door slid aside. Inside, the space was dimly lit, stacks of crates arranged haphazardly. Lyria immediately began scanning with her handheld device, looking for any traces of the toxin. Jason and Marcus started searching the crates, checking shipping labels and seals. "Anything?" Jason asked as Marcus pried open another container. "Nothing yet," Marcus replied, peering inside. "Mostly regular goods. Machinery parts, textiles." Lyria frowned, her scanner beeping softly. "Wait, over here." She motioned them over to a stack of crates near the far wall. "I'm picking up traces of the same compound we found on the contaminated fruit." Jason inspected the crate. No markings. Could be the source. Marcus joined him, pulling out a crowbar. "Let's take a look." As Marcus cracked open the crate, they found not just fruit, but an assortment of exotic plants and produce, each more vibrant and strange than the last. Lyria's scanner buzzed louder as she moved it over the contents. "It's all contaminated," she said. "This must be where it originated." Jason glanced at Marcus. "If this stuff was smuggled in, we might have a bigger problem. Someone's running a black market operation that's endangering the whole station." Marcus nodded grimly. "We need to shut this down before it spreads further." "Lyria, can you get the data you need here? Or do we need to take samples?" "I've got enough data," she said, looking over her scanner's readout. "We should alert station security right away." They sealed the crate and left the hangar quickly. Once outside, Marcus activated his communicator and contacted the station's security chief, explaining what they had found and providing the location of the hangar. "It's good we found this before it got worse," Jason said as they headed back toward the more populated parts of the station. "But I have a feeling whoever's behind it won't be happy." Marcus nodded. "Probably not. But now that the authorities are involved, they'll be keeping a closer eye on these docks." When they reached a quieter area of the station, the three stopped to regroup. Lyria looked thoughtful, her scanner still in hand. This incident raises a bigger question about interspecies trade regulations. If smuggling operations like this are becoming more common, we'll see more outbreaks in the future. Jason looked at her. "So, what's the solution?" Lyria sighed. "Stricter inspections, more comprehensive databases for identifying dangerous goods, and better communication between species. But that's not something we can fix overnight." "It's a start," Marcus said, "and it's more than what most people are doing. By figuring this out, you've already contributed to making the station safer." Jason nodded in agreement. "And if you ever need someone to help you test safe food options, you know who to call." Lyria smiled. "I might just take you up on that. For now, let's make sure station security handles this. Then we can think about how to prevent it from happening again." With that, they headed back toward the station's main levels, their minds already turning to the next steps. Chapter 6. The Solution. Back on the station's main level, Jason, Marcus, and Lyria took a moment to regroup and lay out their next steps. Security forces had already cordoned off the smuggler's hangar, and an official investigation was underway. But that wasn't the end of it. There were still dozens of affected individuals aboard the station, many of them seriously ill. The three friends knew their work wasn't done. "We need to figure out a treatment," Lyria said firmly as they sat in a quiet corner of the market's upper tier. "The station's medics have no idea how to neutralize the toxin. If we don't act fast, we could lose more people." Jason leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "So how do we tackle it?" "You're the scientist, Lyria. Where do we start?" Lyria's brow furrowed as she considered her options. The contaminant is a complex organic compound that breaks down differently depending on the biology of the host. The reason humans aren't affected might be tied to a particular enzyme, something our species lacks, but yours produces naturally. So you're saying I've got some kind of built-in antidote? Jason asked, half joking. Not exactly, but if we can isolate that enzyme and replicate its effects, we might be able to help everyone else. Lyria turned to Marcus. I'll need access to a fully equipped biolab, something more advanced than the standard medical bay. Marcus stroked his chin thoughtfully. I've got a contact who runs a research ship docked nearby. They owe me a favor. If they'll let us use their equipment, you'll have what you need. Jason nodded. Let's get moving then. If we've got a lead, we can't waste time. The trio quickly made their way to Dock 14, where a sleek silver vessel hovered in its berth. Marcus flashed his credentials at the guard, who waved them through. The research ship's interior was a stark contrast to the busy market outside, clean, sterile, and brimming with cutting-edge technology. Lyria immediately set to work, donning a lab coat and scanning through the ship's database of biological samples. Jason and Marcus assisted where they could, preparing the equipment and fetching supplies. It wasn't long before the lab was buzzing with activity, Lyria's sharp commands keeping them on task. Marcus, I need the stabilizer compound from that cabinet, Lyria called, not looking up from her workstation. Jason, run a preliminary sequence on the enzyme samples. Check for cross-species compatibility. Jason stared at the console in front of him. I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm looking at. It's simple, Lyria said, finally glancing his way. Match the sequence patterns here. She pointed at a glowing display. To the reference chart over there. Let me know if you see any outliers. Marcus handed her a vial and then smirked at Jason. Don't worry. I think you're more of a taste tester than a lab tech. Jason rolled his eyes but turned back to the console. Just you wait, Marcus. I'll be the one saving lives while you're busy cracking jokes. Lyria chuckled at their banter. Actually, I need both of you focused. We're dealing with something serious, and we don't have much time. After several hours of painstaking work, Lyria stood back, staring at a small vial of clear liquid in her gloved hand. This is it, she said, her voice calm but firm. A synthesized compound that should neutralize the toxin. Jason and Marcus leaned in, peering at the vial as if it were a treasure. So that's what's going to stop this whole mess? Marcus asked. If the tests hold up, yes, Lyria replied. But we need to confirm it works before we start distributing it. Marcus, can you get us in touch with the station's medical staff? Already on it, Marcus said, pulling out his communicator. They'll set up a trial run with a few of the most critical patients. The next few hours were nerve-wracking. Jason paced the lab, occasionally stopping to ask Lyria about the latest test results. Marcus kept tabs on the patients receiving the treatment, relaying updates as they came in. Finally, a message arrived. The first patient's symptoms had begun to subside. The antidote was working. Jason let out a relieved sigh. Looks like you did it, Lyria. We did it, she corrected. I couldn't have done this without your help. Both of you. Marcus crossed his arms, smiling faintly. It's nice to be the good guys for once. As the news spread through the station, the atmosphere shifted from one of tension to cautious optimism. Lyria worked closely with the station's medics to ensure the antidote was produced in larger quantities. Jason and Marcus pitched in wherever they could, running supplies, organizing treatment centers, and even calming worried passengers. By the time the station's chief medic publicly thanked them for their efforts, the trio had become minor celebrities among the residents. Despite their newfound fame, they stayed focused on the task at hand, knowing there was still work to be done to fully stabilize the situation. When the immediate crisis passed, the three found themselves back in the same quiet corner of the market where their latest adventure had begun. They ordered drinks, safe ones this time, and reflected on what they'd accomplished. You know, Jason said, raising his glass, I think we make a pretty good team. Marcus clinked his glass against Jason's. Not bad for a bunch of freelancers and a scientist. Lyria smiled softly, watching them. You both played a big role. Maybe it's time we started looking at what other problems we can solve together. Chapter 7, Recognition and Celebration. The station's central plaza had never been so lively. News of the successful antidote had spread quickly, and a sense of relief and gratitude seemed to ripple through every corridor. By now, Jason, Lyria, and Marcus were known faces. People nodded at them in passing, some stopping to offer personal thanks. "I have to admit," Marcus said as they strolled through the bustling square, "it feels good to have people say, 'Hey, you helped save my cousin,' or 'Thanks for getting us through that mess.'" Jason chuckled. "It's better than them saying, 'Hey, you're the guy who caused all the trouble.' That's for sure." Lyria, walking between them, smiled. "You two really do enjoy the attention, don't you?" Marcus grinned. "And you don't." "I wouldn't say that," she admitted. It's not why I got into this field. Recognition is nice, but solving the puzzle, that's what drives me." Jason glanced at her. "You've got your priorities straight, Lyria. Still, I think a little celebration's in order." That was exactly what the station's administration had in mind. They'd arranged a gathering in the plaza's open-air rotunda. Soft, colorful lights bathed the area, and long tables were lined with food and drinks from all across the galaxy. Music played from a live band made up of musicians from 4 different species, their rhythms weaving together into something both alien and harmonious. As they approached, they were greeted by the station's administrator, a tall and stately figure with iridescent skin and a warm smile. "Jason, Marcus, Lyria are heroes. We owe you a great debt. Thank you for everything you've done." "Just doing what we could," Jason replied, shaking the administrator's hand. Lyria gave a polite nod. "We're glad the antidote is helping. That's what matters." Marcus, ever the smooth talker, added, "You throw one heck of a party too." The administrator laughed, waving them toward the center of the festivities. "Enjoy yourselves. You've earned it." As they moved through the crowd, people approached with handshakes, pats on the back, and heartfelt thanks. Jason found himself overwhelmed by the number of strangers who wanted to express their gratitude. He felt a bit out of place. After all, he was just a guy who liked trying weird foods. But the warmth in their voices made him realize how much their actions had meant. Marcus, on the other hand, was in his element. He chatted easily with anyone who came up to him, swapping stories and even making new connections for his supply runs. "You never know who you'll meet at one of these things," he said to Jason at one point, holding up a drink. "Could be the start of a lucrative new partnership." Jason rolled his eyes but couldn't help smiling. "You'd find a way to network anywhere, wouldn't you?" Lyria, meanwhile, gravitated toward a group of scientists who were eager to discuss the specifics of her research. She patiently explained her process, the unique qualities of the enzyme, and the challenges they'd faced. Her passion for her work shone through, and it was clear the other scientists were captivated by her insights. As the night went on, the 3 friends finally found a moment to sit down together at a quiet table near the edge of the plaza. Jason leaned back in his chair, watching the crowd. "It's a nice change of pace, seeing everyone so relaxed." "Agreed," Marcus said, raising his glass in a small toast. "Here's to a job well done." Lyria raised her own glass. "To teamwork," she said with a smile. They clinked their glasses together, and for a moment, the world felt simpler. The crisis was behind them, and the station was buzzing with life again. After a while, Jason turned to Lyria. "You think we'll get called on to fix another crisis anytime soon?" Lyria shrugged, a teasing glint in her eye. "With the 2 of you around, I'd say it's only a matter of time." Marcus laughed. "She's probably right. Trouble seems to follow us." Jason shook his head, smirking. "Well, if it does, at least we know we can handle it." As the band played one last song, a slow, melodic tune, the crowd began to drift toward the center of the plaza. Couples and friends alike moved to the makeshift dance floor. Lyria looked at the growing gathering, then back at Jason and Marcus. "Do either of you dance?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I can hold my own." Jason hesitated. Not sure I'd call what I do dancing. Lyria stood, smiling. Come on, let's see what you've got. Jason reluctantly followed her lead, joining the others under the glowing lights. Marcus trailed behind, and the three of them found a spot near the edge of the crowd. At first, Jason was stiff, unsure of himself. But Lyria took his hand, encouraging him to loosen up. Just follow the rhythm, she said gently. Jason nodded, focusing on the music and her movements. Soon, he started to find the beat, and before long, he was moving more naturally. Marcus, always the confident one, was already matching the tempo with ease, throwing in a few spins for good measure. Lyria laughed. Looks like you've done this before, Marcus. I've been to my share of station parties, he said with a grin. But Jason here, he's getting the hang of it. Jason smiled sheepishly, his confidence growing as they danced. The three of them found a comfortable rhythm, their laughter blending with the music. For the first time in what felt like weeks, they were simply enjoying the moment. No crises, no urgency. Just a celebration of what they'd accomplished and the friendships they'd forged along the way. Chapter 8: New Horizons. Jason stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the vast stretch of stars. The station was behind him now, fading into the distance as the ship moved steadily away. He felt a strange mix of emotions, pride in what they'd accomplished, but also a yearning for something more. He turned when he heard footsteps approaching. Couldn't sleep? Marcus asked, joining him by the viewport. He held 2 steaming mugs, offering one to Jason. Thanks, Jason said, taking the cup. Yeah, just thinking about what's next. Marcus leaned against the railing, taking a sip. I've got a few supply runs lined up, but I'm not in any rush. Besides, it's been nice not having to dodge pirates for a change. Jason smiled. That's one way to look at it. You think you'll stick around this sector? Maybe. There's opportunity here. The people on that station, they've been through a lot. They'll need reliable supplies, and I'm happy to be the guy who gets them what they need. Jason nodded, but his gaze drifted back to the stars. I feel like there's more out there, you know? I came here looking for new experiences, new tastes, new cultures. I've seen a lot, but it just makes me realize how much I haven't seen. Marcus chuckled. Sounds like you're ready for your next adventure. Maybe, Jason admitted, but it feels different now. Before, I was just wandering. Now, I guess I want to find something with more meaning. Their conversation was interrupted by the soft chime of the lift doors. Lyria stepped out, her presence calming and familiar. You two are up early. Couldn't sleep, Marcus said, raising his mug in a silent toast. Jason's contemplating the meaning of life. Is that so? Lyria said, a small smile playing on her lips. She joined them by the viewport, her gaze following Jason's out into the starry expanse. What have you come up with? Not much, Jason admitted, his tone light but thoughtful. Just wondering where to go from here. Well, you're not alone, Lyria said. I've been thinking about what comes next too. There's still so much research to be done. So many unknowns. And so many places to see, Jason added. Exactly, Lyria agreed. But it's not just about going somewhere new. It's about understanding it, connecting with it. Marcus shook his head, a grin tugging at his lips. You two sound like philosophers. Lyria laughed. Maybe we are, but isn't that part of why we're out here? To learn, to grow. Jason glanced at her, noting the sincerity in her expression. I think that's exactly why we're out here. For a moment, the three of them stood in comfortable silence, the stars stretching endlessly before them. Then Marcus straightened, draining the last of his coffee. Well, while you two are pondering life's mysteries, I'm going to check on that shipment of medical supplies. It's a good way to start the day. As he left, Jason and Lyria remained by the viewport. The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence shared by people who had been through something significant together. Jason finally turned to her, his expression serious but warm. I've been thinking, he began, about what we've done here. It wasn't just about solving a crisis or helping people. I think it showed me that we're better when we're not going it alone. Lyria tilted her head, her eyes meeting his. You're not one to ask for help easily, are you? Jason smiled wryly. Not my strong suit. But this whole experience, working with you, with Marcus, made me realize that the best things happen when you're willing to trust others. She nodded, her gaze thoughtful. I feel the same way. Before, I was so focused on my own research, my own goals. But now, I see that collaboration opens doors you can't open alone. Jason hesitated, then asked, So, what's next for you? Lyria leaned on the railing, looking out at the stars. I have a lot of data to analyze, a lot of questions to answer, but I don't want to do it in isolation. I want to keep exploring, keep connecting with others. Maybe that means traveling more, finding new challenges. Sounds like we're on the same page, Jason said quietly. Lyria smiled at him. Maybe we are. The ship's engines thrummed softly beneath them, a steady reminder that they were already moving forward, toward whatever came next. Jason felt a sense of calm resolve. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but he wasn't facing it alone. With allies by his side, people he trusted, people he cared about, he was ready for the challenges ahead. Lyria touched his arm lightly. I think we'll find what we're looking for. Jason nodded. Yeah, I think we will.